Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. With season 4, we got some very strange weapon tuning update notes. As we can see, when we're on the actual patch notes page here, we have this one specific paragraph talking about the damage profiles, and essentially every single weapon in Warzone with season 4 reloaded had its weapon damage profile adjusted to rebalance some weapons. Except when it comes to the remainder of the patch notes, they didn't really detail these weapon profile adjustments. They just broadly said, hey, we changed all the weapon damage profiles, but then only mentioned the patch notes and the weapon changes for some certain weapons with other additions, which basically means a lot of weapons are going to feel different here in season 4 reloaded, and we have secret patch notes and secret weapon changes that we now have to discover. And thanks to sim.gg, who actually go through and data mine the weapon stats after every major update, we now have a much better indication of what some of these secret weapon changes actually are. So initially here, shout out to Exalted Vanguard. They actually work on sim and are a part of the data mining process, and they've been tweeting out some of the changes that they've caught that were not mentioned in the patch notes anywhere. For instance, Warzone specific damage profiles are now back, which means essentially for future updates, when they're going through and they're saying, okay, we're adjusting the damage on this weapon or the headshot multiplier on that weapon, it's going to have an impact in Warzone, but it won't necessarily have the same impact in multiplayer. It's not going to be the case of like the TAC V, I think it was in the past, when they nerfed the TAC V for Warzone, but then it also happened in multiplayer and it completely destroyed it for multiplayer when that was not the intention. So these Warzone specific damage profiles are in fact a W, as mentioned. Now, with some of the changes that were made behind the scenes with those damage specific profiles, a few weapons have actually risen in their overall efficiency, and I want to break down the loadouts for these, and we're going to look at the stats for these as well. So a few that Vanguard mentions here are the Lockman 762 in semi-auto. The Cronin Squall is actually back, and the Lockman sub is now a little bit more efficient in the close range. Another kind of interesting one is with the Lockman sub. Yes, it's a great SMG close range, but now with these new damage profiles, the single X13 is also apparently ridiculously good up close. So now we're actually here on sim.gg, and we're gonna look at the stats and see what's actually changed with some of those mentioned weapons in specific to see how much better they actually are. And keep in mind, earlier on today, actually, I just broke down a general top 10 best loadouts to be running, which includes some of these weapons, but also some of these secret changes obviously just became known. So at the end of this video, we'll break down those setups. But if you want to see like the general top 10, you want some basic setups for some of these other weapons, be sure to go and check out that video. It'll be linked on screen at the end of this video and down in the description below as well. But when we look at some of the battle rifles now, we've got the Cronin Squall in semi-auto, and then also in full auto, and then the Lockman 762 in semi-auto, comparing against the SO14 and TAC V, two weapons that we featured earlier today that are obviously great. And when we scroll down, we're looking at 300 health, of course, and the combination shot TTK chart here actually shows that yes, the red line here, the semi-auto Lockman 762 is now very, very good, actually able to outgun every other option here. Now, both lines for the Cronin Squall, the purple and the green, are going to be great. They're right up there now, essentially almost even with the SO14, and then the TAC V in some cases is right there as well. So essentially, the battle rifle category has no bad choices right now. Every single one of these options is very, very competitive with one another. But yes, there are some standouts. That fully auto Cronin Squall, then the semi-auto Lockman 762 are definitely up there in terms of two of the more efficient weapons available right now. We also can look at the close range here. As mentioned, the Lockman sub has improved. Someone I wanted to compare it against some of the other top tier SMGs, including the ISO. As we're going through all these stats and in just a moment, the weapon setups as well. Quick reminder, if you are new to the channel, every day I got you covered with all things going on in COD. So be sure to hit that subscribe button to always stay up to date with stuff like this that you wouldn't know anywhere else, because it's not in the patch notes, of course. And if you guys enjoyed this video, if you find it helpful, let me know by dropping a like on it as well. But when you look at the actual SMG category here, again, 300 HP, and this time on our chart, what we really see is that the close range is where everything is a little bit more competitive now. In those first 9 or 10 meters, essentially. Over range, the purple line here, or Lockman sub, you can see it's still got a pretty steep damage drop off, just like the Vaznev, but in those first 10 meters, the ISO now caught that nerf, and the Lockman sub's damage profile is better, so it actually can beat it out in those first 10 meters. Outside of that, though, you'll notice that the Lockman sub, our green line here, definitely is still excelling a decent amount over the other SMGs. The Vel is up there because it's a nice, just well-rounded sub as well. But the ISO, outside of the first 9 meters or 8 meters, really seems to be the clear #1 choice still. That said, with the MP5, I mean, you can really fry with this thing up close. So The actual super close range meta is ultra competitive, and I love that. We of course covered setups for these earlier on today though, but some interesting notes there for sure. The ISO is no longer the clear far and away #1 choice. You actually have a reason to use some other SMGs now. And then most interesting, the X13 auto. I want to look at this versus the Siege, which of course is another fantastic pistol option, then the MP5 and the ISO 45. And when we look at this, once more, 300 HP. The blue line is the X13 auto, and this thing is insane. Like, there's got to be something going on here that's not right, because I can't see a reality where this should be this much better. You can see the FTAC Siege, which we know as a decent TTK, is technically the slowest here in the close range. The ISO and the Lockman sub or the MP5 are still great there, but this X13 is actually outgunning this apparently, according to these new in-game data mine stats right now. Not sure if that's intended or not. We might see some changes to this in the coming days, but definitely an interesting catch, and one that we would not have known about if it weren't for Sim data mining these secret changes. So briefly breaking down these setups here, the Cronin Squall is still going to be pretty standard. This is the full auto, recommended build, basically. AMOB V4 or whatever optic you are the most comfortable with. 50 round drum, of course. Ripper underbarrel for that better stabilization and stability. Sack and tread 40 to help maintain that good control over range, just because in full auto there is going to be some decent recoil. Then I go for the 6.8 barrel, better range, better velocity, better control on here as well. No high velocity in this case, just for this build in particular. I feel like you really got to focus in on that control and make this as accurate as possible. And obviously, as we saw in the charts there, if you can do that, it's going to fry. Now this Lockman 762 setup is a bit different from my standard one that I have sort of as like a semi-auto and a full auto hybrid build. This one is specifically meant just for semi-auto, where we saw it fries. AMOB V4, and I go for the 50 round drum here as well. You could maybe get away with using the 30 if you wanted to, since you are in semi-auto and you can kind of choose how fast you're going to burn through those 30 or 50 rounds. So either choice there would work just fine. High velocity in this case, that sort of more consistent hit reg feel over the mid to long range. Ripper underbarrel here is especially important for that recenter, and the stabilization there is ultra clutch on semi-auto weapons. Then I go for the Polar Fire S suppressor, basic suppressor, better range, better velocity, just again helping out in that mid to long range. This I feel like is almost a new replacement to the SO14. SO14 is still great, like we covered it earlier today. It's still gonna fry, but this is also now a great alternative that, if used properly, can kill way faster. And then for the X13, obviously this is just used for close range now, and it's not going to be the most practical gun in the world, even though it's got the crazy TTK, but I go for the 50 round drum here. You can also go for 33. I don't think it matters too much. It's more of a preference thing, but you can definitely spray and pray with 50 for sure. I go for the OLZ rear grip, just straight up for better control, because pretty much everything else we're focusing on some better mobility here. Diode laser, better ADS and sprintifier, just making it more like a pocket SMG. The Luck 9 barrel is movement speed and ADS speed, and you can see it hurts the control a little bit, so that rear grip will help sort of negate that. Then I go for the CN30 suppressor. All the suppressors here kind of work all right. This one's not going to slow you down too much, but at least add in some velocity. If you're trying to use this as like that SMG pistol hybrid and you're in some of the mid-range there, you might need that to help back you up. And of course, it's going to keep you off the compass and keep you a little bit more suppressed. But some interesting secret weapon updates that definitely highlight a few outlier weapons that may or may not be intended to be this good, that we wouldn't have known about because they weren't mentioned in the patch notes for whatever reason. So shout out to Sim for actually finding these details and all this information here. Leave a link to the site down below. But that's gonna wrap things up. If you enjoyed the video, let me know by dropping a like on it, and if you're new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button on your way out. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.